For the Atlanta Falcons, they've gone win-loss over the past 6 games, and if they hold form, they'll end the season with a win versus New Orleans. Always an adjustment for a first-year head coach, and such was the case with Arthur Smith and this team. But, Brady, did you see enough to give you some hope that the Falcons are indeed headed in the right direction?
No. I think the tough thing about Arthur Smith's first year was he was taking over a team that needed to be in rebuild mode, but they couldn't because they couldn't start over at the quarterback position given his contract. They couldn't cut Matt Ryan. They couldn't move on from Matt Ryan. So they kind of have to deal with what they had. And unfortunately, that led to a defense that, even under Dan Quinn, struggled to be able to rush the opposing quarterback. They could never really find that edge rush after Vic Beasley kind of failed to be that. Takk McKinley failed to be that. And so they struggled. They're actually worse in the league at getting after opposing quarterbacks. The offensive line, which they've tried to draft and improve over the years, that they couldn't protect Matt Ryan. Calvin Ridley barely played this year. Kyle Pitts was probably the only bright spot, their first-round draft pick. That's really the only thing you can hang your hat on. And now the problem is the fact that you're going to have, a top 10 pick, and yet you still have a contract that you can't get out from underneath. Matt Ryan's dead cap hits like $40.5 million. Even a June 1 post-June 1 designation puts you at 20 and a quarter. That's a lot to take on over the next 2 years. So maybe he's a tradable asset if someone else sees value in him at this point and wants to pay him that amount. But you might be stuck with him for another year, having to draft his eventual replacement and have him sit and watch and learn, which handicaps you from really being able to fully break this thing down and rebuild again, which is what they need to do.
Will, give us a grade. Go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
No, I can give a grade, and I'll give a grade. And,
no, I cut you off. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that the Falcons, I thought, were a little misguided in terms of what they did this offseason. Brady alluded to the Matt Ryan thing. I know they needed to rework his contract to free up cap space, but when you do that and then you trade Julio Jones, they're just sort of floating in this NFL purgatory where we don't know if they are trying to rebuild or if they're just trying to try and keep it going for one last run with Matt Ryan. There was some belief, I think, that Arthur Smith, when he interviewed, said that he would want to work with Matt Ryan, and that's why they ultimately didn't trade him. But I think they sort of need to. The proverbial thing about getting off the pot or not, they probably need to figure that out in Atlanta.
Okay, now give us the grade, Will.
So I give a C-. And that's not because the Falcons were better than the Vikings or anything like that, or better than the Seahawks. It really comes down to expectations. And I think expectations, at least for me, with a rookie head coach, with the Matt Ryan thing lingering, with the inability to go get a young quarterback to try and test him out, I think expectations were low. So I give a C+ for beating up a bunch of bad teams, finding a way to be in the playoff hunt until the second to last week, and then just getting absolutely curb stomped by almost every good team they play.
Brady, what's their biggest offseason need then?
Well, again, it goes back to a number of things. They got to find an answer off the edge. Dante Fowler is a free agent, so you're going to have to replace him, but he wasn't the answer either. They had 17 sacks this season. That's the worst in the NFL. Even as far as getting pressures, they were worst in the NFL. Cordero Patterson becomes a free agent. He was kind of your Mr. Do-It-Everything. Running back, wide receiver, returner. Anything you asked him to do, he could do. You got to think about who's going to replace that sort of productivity and the flexibility. Talked about Matt Ryan. What about the backups? Rosen's a free agent. AJ McCarron's a free agent. You got to think about that. Isaiah Oliver is a free agent at the quarterback spot. Their pass defense was one of the worst in the league, at least in the bottom half. And then Calvin Ridley barely played this past season. I think you look at that and the addition of Pitts, that's a great 1-2 punch. The problem is can Ridley really be the number one wide receiver? A couple years ago, we thought when Julio Jones was injured, Ridley stepped up, he looked the part. And now, since that point, it's kind of like, all right, maybe he can't handle that much.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.